welcome to my podcast on real relationships. My name is Sophie Passon, and I am a relationship expert, international speaker, and best-selling author of the book Your Other Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching the news or social media, TV, the perception given to people is wrong. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, and listen to what real people think, do, or go through, as opposed to creating expectations of something that doesn't actually exist. I may not agree with everything that is said by my guests, but it is their chance to express their opinions and their stories. So here today we have Cynthia Spillman, who is a writer and a dating coach. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
No problem at all. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am nearly 64. I'm very happily married to my third husband, Peter. I have had two children, one of whom sadly died a long time ago. I have a granddaughter of 8, and I used to, with my husband, own a company called Dinner Dates, which was the UK's biggest social networking organization in the UK, offering high-flying singletons events. And I also set up, after that, the International Dating Academy, which was for people wishing to improve their dating skills.
So dating coaching in the UK is still fairly new compared to the US, and a lot of people don't understand what we should need help. Now, first of all, what got you into that?
So what got me into that was having been married 3 times, I felt I had something to offer, especially my target market was the older woman, the mature, and my book, From Dinner Date to Soulmate, Cynthia Spillman's Guide to Mature Dating, was all about that, the mature woman in search in search of love. And I went to the States and I trained as a dating coach after we bought Dinner Dates. And I started taking clients, I designed courses, and I just felt, as you've said, there was a need, and I still think there's a need.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that it's just not, people aren't getting what it is about.
No.
I think some of it, without naming names, is that because some of the people who are seen as leading in the industry, for want of better terms, are more about how to flick your hair, what to text to make sure that someone texts you back, or will make you click. And to me, it's not about that.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it's not a very attractive industry, in my opinion. It's not about the externals. Well, it's about, I always say that finding love is an inside job. I mean, I go on about it in my book, and that if you don't feel good about yourself, you're just going to repeat the same bad patterns. And madness is doing the same thing over again and expecting different results. So a coach can help you, if you're willing to do the work, that is, identify patterns, traits, help you manage your expectations, and hopefully help you to help yourself to find the right person.
And I think this is the issue. People carry on doing the same thing. And there's a bit of a blame culture. You listen to a woman, all men are bad. You listen to a man, all women are bad. And you're never going to get in the middle of all this if you've got that belief system, for starters.
Absolutely. And that's the expectations. Before you're even, in a relationship, you're already sort of tarring everybody with the same brush. And I can't stand that.
Yeah.
Men are all bastards. Well, there's a lot of women who are bitches as well. Exactly
that.
Yes.
And I think I recall a customer of mine who, a male, who said, he was the common denominator into not finding someone. I was like, I agree with that, and that's where you need to go about it differently. But then he tried differently, like 5 times, and then said, I'm the common denominator, I'm a problem, I never meet someone. And I'm like, no, you can't go back to reverting to that person. You have to be you.
Yes.
Not be so desperate. It's not attractive.
No, it's not attractive. And, people smell it a mile away if you're too desperate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we all do things differently.
Yes.
I use NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, a lot. But I also use, despite the fact I've never been married, I do have vast dating experience, I suppose. I've made my own mistakes. I've also learned a lot from others. When I used to work in security, only woman in a world of men, and they would come to mummy to kind of like sort their lives out. So I've learned a lot about like cheating, whether it's the wife cheating or the bloke cheating, or, you know, the single ones that can't find it, whatever. And I used to kind of like try and help them, because I found if we were happy at home, less issues at work. So I don't need to sack them. I don't need to recruit again, you know, that sort of stuff.
Yes.
So I use a lot of life experience as well that isn't mine. So how do you do it?
Okay, so what I do with a client is I've got a comprehensive, well, I speak to them first of all to see if if we click or not, because if you don't click, there's no point. And I send them a comprehensive questionnaire ahead of the first session, and I get them to complete it, and that's quite in depth. And what I also ask for is for independent input for 3 or 4 people who know them objectively, which they don't see, to identify things like, well, are they coming across as scary? What's their dating style? What do you think they're not doing that they should be doing? And it's usually a pretty good clue that if the prospective client is willing to let people do that they're going to be willing to do the work on themselves. And I find that really useful.
And the thing that's quite interesting as well is that I can imagine these 3 or 4 people would never say anything to their face.
Correct. And I won't either.
Yeah.
But it's quite a good mechanism.
No, totally. So what would you say is the point of using a dating coach?
Well, it's a bit like a personal trainer, but for love, basically. And I think the point is that you've got an objective person who can, detach and maybe gently point out or suggest where they think you're going wrong, and help you come up with strategies and challenge you. You've got to be challenged, otherwise you just do the same old thing. So I tend to fact find and then come up with a strategy and then break it down so it's not too overwhelming.
Yeah. I also find that, to me, the answers to the future are in the past. If you don't deal with the past, you're not going to grow and get what you want.
I mean, I studied psychotherapy for 5 years, and I think the most useful thing I ever learned there was that every relationship is a reenactment of the original maternal or paternal caretaking system, in the hope that next time the outcome will be different. And I think it's unconscious. So we choose people who are like our parents or whatever, and try and engineer a different outcome.
What I've found as well is, so up to 12 years ago, shall we call it?
Yes.
So as a child, even teenager, young adult, I was probably more of an introvert than anything else. Through promotion and work and whatever, women in a world of men, I felt I somehow needed to grow. But what I saw as growth was actually probably more being like an extrovert.
Yes.
And that did become me. But as a result, I was often attracting needy people, because all they saw was strength, not realizing that the dragon, which used to be my nickname, actually had a soft spot right in the middle that was completely marshmallow, and that sometimes the dragon also needed support.
That's funny, because I used to get told that I was a scary woman.
There you go. So for me, it was more like I was the fixer, and I suppose I still am to a degree, but I have somehow reverted back to introvert. I can be extrovert in some circumstances, but I certainly won't fight for attention. It ever comes to me, it doesn't. But what I found is that by changing that, and by being probably more authentic and true to myself, as opposed to portraying that image of someone who's strong, I wasn't attracting the right people. But then you could argue one of the things I still need to learn is how to ask for help more, because I don't.
Yes. Yeah, well, we all have our Achilles heel, don't we?
Yeah. But what I mean is that there's a self-awareness that needs to take place that most people don't have or don't want to have because they don't want to look to what they're doing that could, well, what they're doing wrong in essence.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, when we had dinner dates, we it was very frustrating because people were their expectations were ridiculous, and if somebody had the wrong color of hair or whatever, that was it. It was unbelievable. It was like they had a tick list of things that were so silly. I mean, it's not the same as knowing what your values are, but superficial things.
Yeah. So what do you think? What would no, not so much what do you think? What was kind of a setup of dinner dates? Because before doing this, I set up a thing called Sophisticated Singles. And it
Yes,
was about singles parties, dinners, murder mystery, that sort of stuff. And I
yes.
remember thinking as I was hosting these things, that despite the fact it was for the 40 plus, really a load of people who had been married 2 or 3 times before we're still like a 15-year-old and expecting
Yes.
Prince Charming to rock up on a white horse in the middle of a room and the violins come out of the ground.
Absolutely the same as my experience. And we had over 23,000 members, and we had two events a week. We had 6 black tie balls a year. We had we took them on holidays, drinks, cultural events, and all of our events were hosted. And we had to have equal numbers of male and females. Now that was really difficult because, as you'll know, there's a lot more single women, but the men had little prince syndrome. They thought, well, let's just, like I remember hearing one go up to a woman saying, well, we're going to have a shag tonight. Not hello, not who are you, not what's your name, and they were just behaving like teenagers.
One of the things I found personally is that women would come out in packs. So you wouldn't
Yes.
get a single woman. It was very rare to get one on her own. Minimum was 2, up to 10. Blokes by themselves. Never
Yeah.
packs.
And I don't know if you found this, but I found that a lot of the women were resentful towards me because I'd been married 3 times. And they could be quite nasty. I mean, I found it really upsetting at times. Uh, and I also, yeah.
An event I did, and I was talking to somebody else. I was unable to really, I wanted to, but it probably would not have come out the right way, so I didn't. And there was a woman behind me who, the best I can put it, was nothing special, like,
Yeah.
cool. And her reaction was, we're all the fit ones. And I'm thinking, right, what do you mean the fit ones? Do you mean the ones that are like steroids and testosterone at the gym, lifting the weight in front of a mirror, loving themselves? Well, go to the gym if you want to meet those.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I do agree that, men or some men need to either have a dating coach or a friend and listen to their advice regarding like haircuts and what they wear because they're not helping themselves either.
Yeah. And personal hygiene. I mean, Peter had to talk to a couple of the men about poor personal hygiene, which is incredible in this day and age.
I think for me, the one I always remember who came to said event, he was 38, if I remember rightly, from the GDPR information from the time, but he came with his mum and they had a wonderful time with both of them, drinking and sharing a bottle of wine, but that wasn't really the idea of the event, if you know what I mean.
No, but I completely agree with you about the women being in packs, and actually some could be quite nasty. I didn't enjoy it. And also, there were women who tried to seduce Peter.
Right, okay.
In front of me.
Yeah.
I remember there was one who sort of wanted to drag him on the dance floor for a slow dance. And he said, I'm sorry, this is not appropriate. So she was rubbing her breast against him. And, I'm standing there and I'm quite hot-headed. And I was furious. And I just think, how dare they behave like that?
But the thing is, if you take that situation out of context and you're like, right, this is your behavior towards a man, is this really the basis of a long-term, happy, loving relationship?
Well, that's right. And, Peter had to keep on reiterating that he was an extremely happily married man because some of the women were like vultures.
Yeah. So we obviously spoke about expectations.
Yes.
How do you help people to adjust those?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, I think they have to look at their own assets and negative points, or get somebody else to tell them objectively, look,
Hmm.
and maybe that's a coach, maybe that's a close friend or a family member, just say, you are doing this, this, and this that could put men off. You're coming across like this. And it might be uncomfortable to hear it, but if people are still getting the same results, then they need input from somebody else about their expectations. And we had that as well. We had, the geriatrics, and I didn't like the way he folded his napkin. We had nonsense like that as well.
One of the ones I hear a lot of late is women saying that men of, we're looking at 55 plus here, say that men who are their age look and act older.
Yes,
I mean,
I
not
know.
all of them, but
Yeah,
a number of.
yeah, yeah. And I think that again, that's an example of how people are focusing on superficialities. Because how do you know? Sometimes the best things come in surprise packages.
Mhm.
And there's another expression I like: expectations are resentments in construction. How do
Mm.
you know, unless you give somebody a chance to get to know them? How do you know what they're really like? Just because, they've got less hair, or their teeth are the wrong shape, or whatever. And as you get older, you have to be realistic.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah,
do think that it's a jungle out there, for people in search of a relationship. It's not easy, especially the older you get.
yeah. I think the other thing I see a lot of is people who they know they need to come out of a comfort zone. They know certain things. They probably even know that they come across desperate. But
Yes,
I think that in the last 2 years, probably especially, the number of people I've had as customers or as inquiries, shall we call it,
yes,
a very large percentage of them was coming across as extremely desperate
yeah,
but can't see it.
yeah. And that's not a good look, is it? It's
No.
not. When people come across as desperate, um, uh, men can smell it, or women can smell it. It's usually the women, I think, who come across as desperate. But
Ah, the large majority of the ones I've seen were men,
really,
interestingly
isn't
enough.
that interesting?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
interesting. Um, so anyway, nobody likes it if you appear desperate. Certainly, it's off-putting, and I would advise somebody to go away and do some work on themselves and calm down, really, because they're never going to find anybody if they're all hot and heavy like that.
And I think the other thing as well is how really, when you are desperate in that way, you will end up in the wrong relationship. You're
Yeah,
just looking for a body,
yeah,
not
and
someone.
yeah, and you get Mr. Right Now as opposed to Mr.
Yeah, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
or Miss Right Now as opposed to Miss Right. Um, yeah, so I agree with that. You really have to step back sometimes and do the work on yourself
Yeah.
before you go out there looking.
And I think there's also well, there's times of year, quite definitely. I
Yes.
often say Boxing Day to the unconscious, I must find someone by Valentine's Day
Yeah.
applies most years, which is why you get the surge of like
Yeah.
people and fresh blood and fresh meat on all the dating apps. But I
Yeah.
think what people need to realize is that dating, yes, it's like looking like a job. You put your CV online, which is what you
Totally.
do with dating
Yeah.
profiles or whatever. And again, you wouldn't put a dating profile, sorry, you wouldn't write on a CV, oh, I'm back here again.
Yeah, I
You know what I
know.
mean? So why would you do it
Absolutely.
on a dating profile? And why are you so closed off to outside opportunities that have got nothing to do with dating sites? Yes,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
place, but it's not all of it.
Yeah, you've got a network as well. But, the way I look at it also is that if you were looking for a job, you'd put a hell of a lot of effort into it. If you were planning your wedding, you'd put a hell of a lot of effort and some money into it. Why wouldn't you do that when you're searching for a relationship? And you can't decide that by Easter, Christmas, Valentine's Day, you're going to have the one. You just can't.
No, and I think it's an interesting point we just said about the investment side of it, because for a lot of
Yes.
people, it's like, oh yeah, but it's too expensive to get coaching. Okay, fine. You carry on wasting your life for the next 5 years
Yeah,
until you decide that, actually now's the time. But I
yeah,
think people
exactly.
are scared, and I understand that. And I think, again, we go back to, in the UK, it's a new thing, and they're not
Yes.
sure what it's about.
Yeah, that's right. It's constructive and objective help, basically. And the average wedding costs £15,000. It's not going to cost you that for a
No.
decent dating coach. Though that's, of course, a whole other discussion about what we think is a good coach and what isn't. But,
Yeah, and we go back to the beginning when I was saying about some of the people who say, we make you commit
yes,
on what 5 things to send a man that you won't resist or whatever.
yes,
But I think the other thing as well is to remove the blame, as we discussed earlier, about is because I can't remember exactly what the words were, but I remember someone who literally was blaming the person they haven't quite met yet for not turning up or something. And I was like, how can you be so angry towards someone you haven't even met and don't know who it is yet?
I've had that as well. And oh,
Okay.
well, they were 5 minutes late, so they're going to disrespect me. So I'm not going to see them. Yeah, expectations. I mean, honestly, maybe his granny got run over by a bus. You just don't know.
And don't get me wrong, I do get that, I know some people who have been stood up.
Yes, and that's
That's not
horrible.
nice.
No.
That tells you more about them than you, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, I agree.
I think the world of, and again, what I've just said about outside opportunities, the
Yeah.
reason why people rely on online dating is because you're sat in your pajamas with a bottle of wine, scrolling mindlessly through the meat catalogue
Yes.
and not putting yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I really hate that, and I don't know if it's just men, but that a lot of the industry, they will only take on a client who's, a size 10 or 12,
Oh, God, yeah.
has the same look. They all look the same. I can't stand that.
Yeah, no.
Where is the authenticity in that?
And this is the thing, these people who all look the same, we attract the same people who all look the same, with the other sex or same sex or whatever.
Yeah.
And yes, you are true to who you are, not trying to hide yourself with a trap pout and like,
Oh,
you're not going to find the right person. That's the end of it.
yeah, absolutely. And that's something that really infuriates me. That when there's this, I remember seeing a matchmaker advertising on Facebook that she had a very handsome Jewish wealthy businessman, and there was a picture of him, and he was sitting with his legs akimbo and his arms like this, and he wanted I couldn't believe it. He wanted a woman who had blonde hair, perfect teeth, was no older than 25, and had a flat stomach and had to be Jewish. And I tell you, I could not believe what I was. And even worse, this woman, this matchmaker, was getting replies from
Guys, yeah.
others in the industry saying, "Oh, I have 3 people like that." And I'm thinking, what the hell is this?
And this is the thing, that's not the real world, is it? And that's not even, inverted brackets, real people. You know, a customer of mine met someone whilst we were doing the work together who was totally the opposite of what she was looking for. First of all, he didn't even own a car because he didn't need one, but he had modes of transport, just not a car.
Yeah.
And she was going through, I'm saying as little as I can so that she can't be identified, but she was going through at the time a series of operations.
Yeah.
That meant she was reliant on others. And despite that and all the rest of it, we're still together 4.5 years on, if it's not 5 now.
Yeah.
Because he was able to help her through that sort of stuff. She was able to let him and learn to trust him to do that. And actually, these issues probably created a better foundation to the relationship that if it not been there.
Yes. Yes. And I always say, tell the truth, don't lie. on your profile, don't lie. You will get found out. Don't lie. Be honest.
Profiles. Honestly, people need to put more effort into that.
Yes. Yeah.
99.9% of people I've got on there, I like to go out and socialise, but I also like to watch a DVD or Netflix with a bottle of wine of an evening. And I'm like, why does everybody feel the need to do that and put that down?
Yeah.
It's a list of what they want.
Yeah.
And as we've said before, what you want might not be what you need.
No, absolutely. And what are your true non-negotiables? And be flexible as well.
Totally. So what would you say to someone who's listening to this thinking, oh, you're now scaring me? All you've said is quite scary because, I want to meet someone.
Well, I would say, get out there. Get out there. If you need help, get help, and treat it with dedication. Be proactive, because it's not going to come to you. You can make it happen, and there are still plenty of people out there. Plenty of people. Though it's difficult, there are plenty of people. Manage your expectations, get some help, and also try, though it's a very serious topic, try and have a bit of a sense of humor as well, not take it all so seriously.
Yeah.
It's a numbers game. If you get out there, and you will find somebody. You may not find them straight away, but don't get discouraged, because by force of getting out there, you will eventually meet somebody.
Yeah, and I think the other thing as well is putting a little bit of effort in.
Oh, you've got to put the effort in. It's work.
Yeah. If you know you're not overly self-confident, if you know all of these things, you need to sort them out.
Yes, absolutely. And you can get help to sort them out as well.
Because
work on yourself.
It's an emotional roller coaster. There's no doubt about it.
Yes. But, there's hope. Whereas if you sit at home, there's no hope.
No, quite. And I think it's also questioning actually why you want a relationship.
Yeah, because actually sometimes
for the right reason.
Yeah, for the right reason. That's another chestnut. Sometimes you might think you want a relationship, but actually you don't want a relationship. Or you want one for the wrong reason.
And I think it's also okay to be single. A lot of people, I'm thinking of one in particular, seem to think there's something wrong with you if you're single, and even more so when you don't want to look for somebody. But sometimes you have to take some time out. You don't have to be with someone all the time. Sometimes
absolutely.
you have to be by yourself.
Yeah, and actually, between my second and third husband, I call it my gap year between husbands, but I had decided, I'd had a really abusive episode with somebody after my second marriage ended, and I decided I can't do this anymore. I literally, it was like having to detox.
Yeah.
And I had a year out, and then I met Peter, and he is my big love. So sometimes you just have to not be in a relationship. You have to do the work on yourself and just detox from it all.
I think that's a very healthy thing to do. And I've seen a lot of people that go from one relationship to the next. There's hardly no gap. And actually what we're doing is creating a pattern.
Yeah, totally. And you won't help yourself. You'll just get frustrated and get down on yourself.
Yeah. Right, Cynthia, thank you so much for
thank you.
I think our ramblings was one of the better ways of putting it. But I think that, it's interesting to discuss it with someone who does the same as me.
Yes.
Sees the same as me. And I think that for the people who we listen to this, it might be a little bit brutal at times, but they need to know.
Absolutely. And, life's too short to mess around.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
And for everybody else, if you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe, leave us a review, and more importantly, come back for the next episode. Thank you.